Welcome back. And today, Sunbasket has sent, well, I selected, they sent the Madras coconut curry with tofu, tomatoes, and black rice. One of the things you've noticed about these videos is that I very seldom follow the recipes to a T. One thing for sure in this particular recipe is it does not address how to work with tofu. Because this is going to be a vegetarian dish and most people don't like tofu, the way that you cook the tofu is really important to try and change people's minds about the tofu. So one of the first things that needs to happen, and it has to happen about 30 minutes before you start cooking, so this is one of those dishes that you need to actually pay attention to before you want to eat, because this takes a bit of time, is the tofu. So this has got an organic firm tofu. And in order to properly cook the tofu so that you get a nice crust on it, you need to drain the excess liquid from the tofu. And the best way to do that is to press it between paper towels. Not that I'm advocating wasting paper towels at this time of year. So I'm going to go ahead and just use the saucepan that I've got set up, and so I'm not dirtying another pan. Paper towel on the bottom, paper towel on the top. And then you want to put something heavy on it. And I just happen to have a box of wine that I just barely opened. So it's pretty heavy. It's like 3 bottles, I guess. And I'm going to let that sit for about 30 minutes to drain the excess liquid and the water out of the tofu, because otherwise it will release a lot of liquid while you're cooking it and you won't get a firm texture to it to try and replace the meat sort of texture in the dish. So this is a really important step that you need to do if you're using tofu. One of the things that I always like to point out when you're using these meals is, even though they say to do your prep while something else is going on, don't do that. Just do all of your prep beforehand. So when you're ready to go, you're ready to go. And you don't forget something, you don't burn something. One of the things that needs to happen is the tomatoes. And in case you missed it, I'm going to show you a really easy way to slice the tomatoes. Usually if you've got them, you're doing them one at a time, cutting them in half. So I saved the lids that go along with those little deli containers that you get when you order takeout food. And I save the containers because I always use those to put my prep food into. So I've got the lid and I've just got it full of the tomatoes right now. And just hold it firm with one hand and take a sharp knife and go in between the tomatoes all the way through. And my knife's not long enough exactly to go on these end pieces, so I'm just going to turn it and do it again real quick. Right through there. Voila! The tomatoes are all sliced in half, and I will go ahead and put those into the container with the other vegetables that I'm going to prep that go in at the same time. So I'll put the carrots that were not as part of the meal, but I happen to have them and I like carrots in my curry. I will go ahead and do the red pepper in with this particular set of vegetables because I have a red pepper and I like red pepper in my curry. And I personally think onions are totally necessary to caramelize an onion before you do any really good curry sauce. So I'll go ahead and do the onions, but I'll put them into a separate container because those need to cook first before you add in the rest of the vegetables. So I'll go ahead and get working on that. Now that the onions are about the color I want them to be, it's all right if it's a little bit inconsistent, it's not a big deal. I want to cook the mushrooms that I decided to include in this dish also. So I'm going to just put the onions on top of the other vegetables that I'm going to cook in a minute. So they'll be added back in at the same time. And now I'm going to go ahead and brown the mushrooms. So I'm putting them right in the same pan. Nice. I am going to add just a little bit of oil, some salt. I'll let these reduce down, get rid of the moisture out of them, And while that's going, I will go ahead and prep the tofu that we have been drying. While the mushrooms are cooking in the background, I want to go ahead and do something with the tofu. If I don't do anything, I can just use it like it is, but tofu on its own doesn't really have any kind of a flavor to it. So most of the moisture has been absorbed, and I want to go ahead and slice them into even squares so it will cook evenly. But I want to put a little bit of flavor into the tofu, and one of the things that's most important is to not use an oil-based marinade for the tofu, because there's still a lot of water content in the tofu. If you put something that is oil-based in here, oil and water just doesn't work well. So I've got my little container that I have the mushrooms in. These are about 1-inch square pieces. I'm going to just go ahead and put them in the container. I am going to season them with a little bit of rice vinegar. There we go. No need to measure. And some ponzu sauce, which is like a citrus kind of soy sauce, citrusy blend. And we'll set these aside and let them marinate while the mushrooms cook. And let's get started and get the rice going. So with the black rice, go ahead and just put it in and just follow the directions. 1 1/4 cups of water. We'll put it on, bring it to a boil, put some salt in, lid on, and let it steam. And again, just, please understand, just because I'm making these changes to the recipe doesn't mean that if you don't follow the recipe exactly, it won't be a good dish, because it still will be a good dish. Like I said, I've been doing this for a long time. I know what I like, and I don't always do things the traditional way, but this just, in my opinion, kind of amps up the meals just a little bit. So go ahead and get the rice started while the mushrooms are cooking. When the mushrooms get finished and they get that nice golden brown color and they lose all their moisture, we will go ahead and just dump the rest of the cooked onions in, the carrots, the red peppers, and the tomatoes that we cut earlier, and get that in the pan to start cooking, especially the carrots, because those are going to take the longest. Okay, so now that the mushrooms are nice and brown, I'm going to go ahead and add in the rest of the veg that I've already worked on. Give it a little bit of a stir. Bet you can't smell that. I haven't even put anything good in yet. So the next thing I'm going to go ahead and add, which is not part of the recipe, but I love ginger, so I'm throwing in some ginger. I also have some lemongrass, and I'm going to put a little bit of lemongrass in. Again, totally optional, not necessary. I'm also going to put in some tomato paste. That's from me. Oh, it's not even open yet. All right, let's open it up. Give a squirt. Give a stir. tiny bit of cayenne pepper, not a lot because I don't want it to be too spicy, so I'm just only going to use just a little bit in this dish. Give it another stir. All right. So now that that's all in there together, nice and yummy, I'm doing this in this way so that I'm not having to dirty more than one pan. So I'm going to go ahead and take the vegetables back out, put them back in this container, and then I'm going to go ahead and cook the tofu because I do want to have a nice crust on the tofu. And I could put the tofu in with the vegetables and just cook them as is, but because I want the tofu to have a crust, I want to give them room, cook them separate so that I can get a nice sear on the tofu. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do next. All right, so now that the tofu's in the pan, just let them sit. Don't try to work with them too much. And then go ahead and give them a flip. And if you remember to work clockwise from where you started, then everything should be relatively even. You don't need any tongs. I'm just using the knife that I used to cut the tofu with. Perfect. So once this is done, then I'll go ahead and add the vegetables back into this and the sauce. And you'll see how this all comes together. Now that the tofu's cooked all the way around, I don't want to really be stressful or aggressive in the way that I stir this. So this is the Madras sauce that came with the dish. I'm going to be real easy about how I stir it so I don't break the tofu. But one thing that I am going to add, because I love curries with coconut milk, I don't know if it's traditional or not. It's probably not, because if it was, they would send it. And they're pretty good about that. But I don't want to lose any of the sauce that's in here that my spatula couldn't get out. So I'll do this in a couple of pours with the coconut milk, so I can make sure and get all the flavor that's stuck in the nooks and crannies. Perfect. All right. And again, save this container because you can use it for something later on. I'll go ahead and finish pouring the can of coconut milk in. I'm going to add the vegetables that we already sort of started cooking. And again, I'm going to be kind of gentle so I don't break the tofu up into small pieces, because it is kind of a replacement of the meat in this dish. So I'll give it a nice stir. I took the lime and I quartered it while I ate it, I guess. So I'm going to do some fresh lime in here while it's cooking, and maybe one more. And then while this is coming together, the rice is simmering away, I'm going to go ahead and chop the cilantro and get my plates out, and we'll be ready to eat in just a few minutes. Okay, time to finish the dish. So, the black rice is done. Put a spoonful in each dish. One thing I did do is I got rid of my IKEA dishes and pulled out my vintage pieces and decided to start using those every day instead of saving them for special occasions, because, I don't know, every day we're here is a special occasion now, right? So, black rice in the bottom. This smells so nice. A spoon some right on top. One thing I did, I like to have some kind of a texture to this, and oftentimes you'll see cashews or peanuts with a curry dish. So I went ahead and crushed some peanuts in a bag. Oh look, I've got a lot for leftovers too. This is nice. Let's see if I can get my husband to eat some of this tofu. So that I can put it on top. Taking some of the lime, give it a little squeeze, and I'm putting just a little bit of cilantro on his because he doesn't like it, but I think it's totally necessary, so I'm putting a lot on mine. Some of the green onions, and some of the peanuts. I just crushed them in a Ziploc baggie with my rolling pin. Easy peasy. Very good. All right, let's give this a taste. See if it needs anything. All right, it's gonna be a little hot. It's another winner. And we're having vegetarian, what is today? Thursday. Vegetarian Thursday. Anyway, see you next time.